After months of quiet companionship, laughter, and shared moments, Martha Reynolds felt a change in herself she had never thought possible. Life, which had once been predictable and safe, was now full of energy, color, and joy. The days that had once passed in quiet routine now held anticipation, small adventures, and a warmth she had long believed was behind her. With Caleb by her side, she discovered that age, expectation, and judgment had no power over her happiness. Their mornings began slowly, with Martha preparing breakfast while Caleb tended to Daisy or organized chores outside. The smell of fresh coffee and warm toast would fill the house, mingling with the scent of the garden that Martha nurtured so carefully. There was a rhythm to these mornings that brought comfort, yet at the same time, a sense of excitement lingered, the knowledge that each day could hold surprises. Sometimes Caleb would walk into the kitchen carrying freshly picked vegetables from the ranch, and they would laugh together over small kitchen mishaps, teasing each other gently as they prepared meals. These small moments, ordinary to an outsider, were extraordinary to Martha. As the weeks turned into months, Martha and Caleb found themselves deeply involved in each other's worlds. Martha had grown accustomed to the rhythm of ranch life, learning about feeding the animals, repairing fences, and checking on the cattle. Caleb, in turn, showed a quiet patience that Martha admired, never rushing her, always teaching with encouragement, and allowing her to grow confident in tasks she had never imagined herself performing. The work was satisfying, yes, but it was also symbolic, a shared investment in life, in trust, and in a future neither of them could yet fully see. One crisp autumn morning, Caleb suggested they take a walk along the hills near her house.
The bond between them had grown stronger, built on trust, skill, and courage. They were no longer just two people running from danger. They were partners, facing the desert and the soldiers together. Ahuli took a deep breath, feeling both fear and determination. The path ahead would be difficult, but she had learned to trust her instincts, to rely on her protector, and to navigate the desert with skill. They moved silently, carefully through the canyon and into the hills beyond, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them next. The desert was harsh, the soldiers persistent, but their courage and determination burned brightly. Together they would survive. The morning light broke slowly over the hills, casting long shadows across the desert terrain. Ahuli and her protector moved cautiously through a narrow pass, the wind carrying distant sounds of the soldiers searching below. They were close, more persistent than ever, their voices echoing across the rocks and valleys. Ahuli's heart beat fast, a mix of fear and determination pumping through her. Every step was heavy with the knowledge that capture could mean the end, yet she felt a new strength rising within her, a quiet courage that had grown with every challenge she had faced. Her protector stayed close, scanning the landscape for danger. His movements were calm and deliberate, but Ahuli could sense the tension coiled in his muscles, the awareness that danger could strike at any moment. He had become more than just a guide or a shield. He was her anchor, the presence that gave her courage when fear threatened to overwhelm her. She followed silently, trusting him completely, knowing that his experience and bravery had saved her life more than once. Suddenly, they heard the sharp call of a soldier in the distance. The soldiers had discovered their path and were moving quickly, shouting commands. Ahuli froze, pressing herself against the rock wall.
He understood that compromise did not diminish his strength. It showed his wisdom. Molly, too, found herself reflecting. She had gained not only a functioning irrigation system, but also insight into the complexity of relationships in a small town. She recognized the value of preparation, patience, and respect in every interaction. Her confidence grew as she realized that persistence, coupled with understanding, could overcome obstacles that initially seemed insurmountable. As the sun set over Pine Creek, the town returned to its usual rhythm. The fields were calm, The animals rested, and the gentle hum of summer evening filled the air. The immediate conflict between Tom and Molly had been resolved, but the lessons lingered. Both individuals had learned about compromise, resilience, and human connection, while the town had been reminded of the power of community, empathy, and communication. The story of the irrigation pipe, once a source of tension and gossip, became a quiet example of growth for everyone involved. Tom and Molly, once adversaries in a small dispute, had learned to respect each other's perspective and work together for a common goal. The town of Pine Creek had witnessed the challenges and rewards of cooperation, and the incident became part of the town's collective memory, a story of pride, patience, and the importance of understanding. Even as life returned to normal, the experience left its mark. Tom approached his work on the ranch with renewed reflection, occasionally thinking back on Molly's persistence and the conversations they had shared. Molly continued to nurture her crops, mindful of the lessons learned and grateful for the compromise that had allowed her farm to thrive. And the townspeople who had watched, talked, and learned carried the story forward, knowing that conflicts, while inevitable, could be transformed into opportunities for understanding and connection.
For the first time, he understood that his actions had meaning beyond recognition, beyond status, beyond his past mistakes. He packed his medical kit carefully, making sure nothing was left behind that could be useful to the villagers. He checked the supplies, cleaned the tools, and wrapped the instruments securely. Each item reminded him of the nights he had spent tending to injuries, improvising with what he had, and staying vigilant through pain, exhaustion, and uncertainty. Those nights had been grueling, but they had also been transformative. He had faced the desert, faced fear, and faced the possibility of failure, and he had succeeded. The young woman approached him, her step steady but cautious. She placed her hand briefly on his arm, a silent gesture of gratitude and farewell. Elias smiled gently and whispered, "Take care of yourself. Keep walking. You are stronger than you know." She nodded, and a small tear glistened in her eye. He knew that words were not enough, but the bond they had built was felt more than spoken. Trust, respect, and care had bridged their differences in language, culture, and circumstance. Elias realized that this moment, this farewell, was as important as any surgery he had ever performed. He mounted his horse slowly, feeling the familiar weight of the leather saddle beneath him. The desert stretched endlessly before him, a mixture of red cliffs, dry riverbeds, and rolling hills. It was a harsh land, but it had taught him resilience, patience, and humility. For years he had run from his past, believing that mistakes defined him. But now, he understood that redemption was not about erasing the past. It was about the choices he made today, the lives he touched, and the courage he showed in the face of uncertainty. As he rode away from the settlement, Elias thought about the journey that had brought him here.
The wind carried the scent of fallen leaves, and the trees blazed with fiery reds, golds, and oranges. Martha felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in years as she followed him up the trail, Daisy trotting happily ahead. As they reached a high point overlooking the valley, Caleb stopped, looking out at the view with a thoughtful expression. "Martha," he said softly, "I want you to know something. Being with you, it's changed how I see life. You've taught me patience, perspective, and the value of really noticing someone. I don't care what anyone thinks about us. I care about you. And I want us to continue building this together." Martha turned to look at him, her heart swelling. There was no hesitation in his words, no uncertainty, only honesty. "Caleb," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I feel the same way. You've brought life back into my days, into my heart. I've been afraid, yes, but being with you makes me braver, happier, alive." They stood together for a moment, holding hands, letting the wind brush past them and the sunlight warm their faces. Martha realized that this was more than a friendship or a passing infatuation. It was a partnership built on trust, respect, and shared joy. They were learning how to be with each other fully, without apology or fear, and the freedom of it exhilarated her. Life at home continued with a new rhythm. Evenings were spent together by the fireplace, sharing stories of their day, reading aloud from favorite books, or planning small trips to nearby towns. Sometimes they would take Daisy on long walks along the river, laughing as she splashed through the water. And sometimes they would simply sit quietly on the porch, watching the sky change color as the sun set behind the hills. Every moment, large or small, carried meaning. Martha had learned to treasure these experiences, to see joy not only in grand gestures, but in the ordinary, the shared, the simple.
Her protector put a steadying hand on her shoulder. "We have to keep moving," he whispered. "Now." Without hesitation, they slipped through a narrow crevice, a hidden path that wound upward toward a higher ridge. Every movement had to be precise. One misstep could reveal them. As they climbed, Ahuli's legs burned from exhaustion, her lungs struggling in the thin morning air. Yet she pushed herself forward, step by step, driven by the knowledge that stopping meant danger. Her protector led, clearing the way, alert for every possible threat. Occasionally he would glance back, ensuring she was still close and safe. His vigilance was constant, his presence a silent promise that he would not let the soldiers reach her. They reached a narrow ledge, overlooking a valley where the soldiers were regrouping. From this height, Ahuli could see the determination on their faces, the way they spread out, searching carefully for any sign of her. Her stomach tightened with fear, but she also felt a surge of gratitude toward her protector, Round. In despair, without him, she would have been caught long ago. She watched as he whispered to her, pointing toward a hidden path that led behind a series of rocks and boulders. This was their chance, a risky move, but the only way to gain distance and possibly safety. They moved quickly, slipping between shadows, keeping low. The soldiers shouted, realizing their quarry was close, and began running toward the last traces of movement they had seen. One soldier's flashlight swept across the rocks, and Ahuli pressed herself against the ground, holding her breath. Her protector acted immediately, creating a diversion by rolling a boulder down a steep slope. The sound echoed loudly, drawing the soldiers' attention and forcing them to change course. Ahuli seized the moment, following him to a small hidden canyon. Inside the canyon, she finally allowed herself a brief moment to rest.
The town had noticed the changes in Martha as well. People who had once whispered or raised eyebrows now observed with curiosity and sometimes admiration. Some neighbors stopped to chat more warmly, perhaps inspired by the genuine happiness they saw reflected in her smile. Martha didn't concern herself with judgment anymore. She had learned that happiness was not something to be measured by the opinions of others. It was something to be experienced fully, savored without hesitation. Caleb's unwavering support had shown her that authenticity mattered far more than perception. One Saturday afternoon, Martha invited Caleb over to help prepare her garden for winter. The task was simple but meaningful: trimming plants, clearing debris, and planting bulbs that would bloom in the spring. As they worked together, Martha realized that their relationship had become seamless, a partnership that flowed naturally. Caleb guided her gently, she assisted willingly, and they laughed together when Daisy interrupted by chasing a stray leaf or nudging their tools. Martha felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life she had, for the love she had found, and for the courage she had discovered within herself. The most profound moment came one evening as they shared a quiet meal. The sky outside was painted in muted shades of pink and lavender, and the house was filled with the scent of roasted vegetables. Caleb reached across the table, taking Martha's hand in his. "You know," he said, his voice low and serious, "I don't ever want you to feel like you have to apologize for who you are, for what you've lived through, or for the life you've led. I admire you, respect you, and care for you exactly as you are. No changes needed, no judgments. Just us. Martha felt tears prick at her eyes.
Her protector handed her a small portion of water and a few berries. "Drink," he said softly. "We need to stay strong." Ahuli drank gratefully, feeling the cool water soothe her parched throat. She looked at him, her eyes filled with emotion. "You've risked everything for me," she said quietly. "I don't know how I can ever repay you." He shook his head. "Psst. You survive. That is enough," he replied simply. "We will find a way out of this, together." His calm, unwavering tone reassured her. Brr, 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 brr. She realized that survival was more than hiding or running. It was about courage, trust, and standing together in the face of danger. He had become her shield in every sense, putting himself in harm's way to ensure her life. As the sun rose higher, the soldiers closed in once more. Ahuli and her protector moved through the canyon carefully, using every rock, shadow, and natural cover to stay hidden. But the soldiers were skilled and relentless. One group spotted a trace of their passage and began moving with alarming speed toward their location. Ahuli's pulse raced as fear threatened to overwhelm her. She glanced at her protector, who met her eyes with a calm resolve. His presence steadied her, and she felt courage returning. The soldiers reached the entrance to the canyon. Ahuli pressed herself against the wall, trembling, but her protector stepped forward, placing himself between her and the advancing soldiers. He held his ground, standing tall and unwavering, ready to confront the threat. Ahuli's heart swelled with gratitude and admiration. In that moment, she understood the full meaning of courage, not the absence of fear, but the willingness to face danger to protect another. A tense silence fell as the soldiers approached. Ahuli could see the determination on their faces, their frustration at not finding her. She felt the weight of the moment pressing on her chest, knowing that everything could change in an instant.